want to thank Bernard, James and Catherine for coming and giving us of your time today, and for the submissions you've made and for the work you do generally. Thank you for all of that. It's really important work. In terms of the work we're doing for the pre-legislative scrutiny, I suppose there's a few points I would make. Our democracy depends on free and fair elections, and for them to be healthy and effective and strong, it needs to be representative. So when I think about the points that you were making there, Bernard, about how far removed travellers are from the political process and the political establishment, and from voter registration and participation, I think I agree with everything that you say, and it is something we have to look and charge the Electoral Commission to try and address. But I'm also struck by, I come from Dublin Central, and the north inner city of Dublin Central is a constituency that has in parts more than 60%, 65% of the population identifying as non-Irish. And there's, I think the last census had more than 500,000 of the population identifying as non-Irish. More than 12% of our population now identifies as non-Irish. And there's a massive disconnect there as well, and we live in a diverse society. We need our politics to be diverse also. So I suppose in terms of the Electoral Commission, you've mentioned, Bernard, I think having a minorities advisory committee or a minorities function. Would you see that, or can you elaborate on how that could work, particularly, I suppose, to address non-Irish? And when we talk about gender equality in politics, and there's been progress made in certain respects, and the gender quotas, I have to say I don't necessarily agree that it's easier for independent females or females outside of a political party to progress politically than to do so within a party. But I suppose that's a debate for another day. But in terms of the quotas, and the quotas as they're being applied are being applied to parties, do you think there would be any merit in changing it to being a situation whereby quotas were assigned to the assemblies? So, for example, at a local authority level, or in the Dáil, or in the Seanad, that 40% of the seats would be reserved for females, 40% reserved for males, and then 20% could be a mix, or some variation of those percentages, but that we would take the quota element of it, remove that from the organisations or the independents, and actually place it on the assemblies. That would, I believe, drive political behaviour and would result in assemblies that are representative, as opposed to us trying to drive activity within subsets of the political anatomy, be they political organisations. And just, I completely concur with all of you in terms of the electoral register. I believe that we need to strengthen the functions that are being proposed. We do need a centralised register. We need to simplify the registration process, but we absolutely need to beef up the authenticity of it as well, and the verification process. And that's a hard balance to get right when you're trying to accommodate people maybe who are transient, facilitating their easy access and registration, but at the same time balancing and ensuring that we mitigate against voter fraud. So any thoughts you have on how we could simply do that, or how the Electoral Commission could simply do that, would be very welcome. Caramagad.
Senator, thank you, Senator Fitzpatrick. Again, we're nearly up to 4 minutes on questions there, so if the witnesses could be brief in their responses. I have 4 more questions, 4 more members to get through, and we've got about 27 minutes left. Senator Fitzpatrick, I think the first question was to Mr. Joyce on the Minority Advisory Committee for Travellers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mary Fitzpatrick. I'm going to be brief because I'm just conscious of time for other members. Absolutely, I think when we're talking about minorities, we're also talking about new communities and existing communities in that context. So it's really about ensuring that that's looked at a holistic approach in terms of the Commission, but also that it can also appoint people from those minorities within the group as well. So it's not, it's not people talking about the community, but the communities themselves engaged within the process. So I think that would be a really positive step in terms of trying to move from that level of people feeling disenfranchised to to putting in further steps which bridge the gap between establishment. But the other side is also is about people who are representative of those groups, that the Dáil or the Seanad is representative of the community, the society that we live in. And it's always nice when you see travellers, it's always great when you see other minority groups, it gives you a sense of this is reflective of the true Ireland that we represent. And what it was highlighting there is that travellers have never been represented in the Seanad and the Dáil in the last 100 years. So it's only now, and yet, we make such a big deal about it, and we think this is great, but we're still so far removed. And the onus should not be on any individual, but it's on all of us to do the right thing. And the right thing is to make this Ireland a place where it's representative and inclusive of the decisions that are made about our lives. And finally, I think that the point there is that the Seanad, and which I presented, many, I think, before, but I do find that it can be very formed by elite. Only 1% of travellers go to third level education. So if you're to take that into consideration, 99% of travellers don't, and therefore, how do the process that is used within that is already restrictive, and it's already putting, certain groups at a disadvantage. So I think that would have to change as well, just in terms of making sure that we're talking about reform, but in a reform and that's fit for purpose in the 21st century.
Thanks, Mr. Joyce. And Senator Fitzpatrick, there's a further Fianna Fáil slot, and we might try and get to those two questions then for the other two witnesses.
That would be great.
Is that be okay? Great, appreciate that. Thank you.